Hello and welcome to Kidney Plugged In. On the show today, we are proud to welcome Dr. Arun Garg, a renowned BC physician and community leader who's been practicing for over 40 years. Former president of the Doctors of BC, Dr. Garg currently heads Fraser Health's South Asian Health Institute, and he's the founder of the Canada-India Network Society, a nonprofit that collaborates between people, organizations, and institutes to improve the health of people in Canada and India, building a truly global, healthy civil society. Dr. Garg joins us today to talk about chronic diseases that disproportionately impact the South Asian community: kidney disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and how they're interrelated. So stay tuned to hear about risk factors, lifestyle modifications one can adapt, and what we've learned from COVID-19 pandemic that we can apply to our chronic disease mindset and actions to take charge of our own health. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss his inspiring message and practical applications. And it's all next, right here on Kidney Plugged In.
Dr. Garg, please tell us about yourself and in particular, your work to support those of South Asian heritage living with chronic health care conditions. What led you to this passion for this work?
Yeah, very happy to share. I'm a medical doctor, have been in practice for over 40 years. Now, 10 years ago, I got interested in India-Canada relationships. And that led to visiting India. And to my surprise, I found that the chronic diseases, which we'll be talking about, like diabetes, hypertension, renal disease, is so much more prevalent among South Asians' heritage. So I started to look into it, and I said at that time that there are some opportunities here to work with our community, to work with people, to work with the individuals, things which are not available to them otherwise, so-called gap. And I thought rather than just sitting, let's do something about it. So that led to Canada-India Network Society, and the rest, as they say, is history. I think I'm glad I did it, and I'm really enjoying it. And we just have a fabulous, I think, in my view anyway, fourth Canada-India Network initiative. And our purpose now is getting more and more focus and more deeper and deeper focus to engage the people themselves. And so I'm really happy that you have invited me, and that this is part of the journey of sharing what we could do together to be healthy.
Well, thank you for that background. And when was the Canada-India Network Society founded?
We're celebrating our 11th year, really 10 year, because of the COVID. We had to kind of shut down last year. So 2010 is when we started, the famous BC Olympics.
Wonderful. 2 milestones that year then.
Yeah.
So you were speaking a little bit about what you had seen in India with regards to diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, kidney disease. Can you explain a little bit about how all three disproportionately impact the South Asian community?
First of all, this is a relatively new disease. All these diseases, all these chronic diseases, if you were to come and look at it 100 years ago or 200 years ago, the prevalence was much less. So this whole thing started much recently. And from South Asian community point of view, very interestingly, most of it is 50 years, 60 years old. So if you look at the numbers before 1960 or 1950, the numbers were much smaller. So that begs the question, why there is this disproportionate now increase in these diseases in this particular group of people. People have many ideas. Obviously, it's multifactorial. Nothing is as simple as just saying this is what is causing it. There is always many reasons. And I think as we are talking to a very broad general audience, I must say that these are some ideas I'm sharing. It's not any medical advice, I think. And also, research is constantly changing ideas. So, for example, what I'm going to share, I wouldn't have been saying even 2 years ago or a year ago. So I would say there are essentially, in my mind, the preponderance reason is what we call nurture, or even broader term, which is a very important concept, and that is called epigenetics. In other words, your genes are okay, but how genes work is being influenced by your behavior. And interestingly, Rama, this behavior, epigenetics, is intergenerational. So if something happened in your family history, it could show up for 3 or 4 generations. So people think it might be my genes, what can I do? And that issue is important for our community, because our community certainly has a tremendous faith value. So they start to relate it to, oh, I can't do anything, it's in my fate, or it's a fatalistic approach. So I think that's why it's important to realize that modern science is saying that most of these chronic diseases are because of what's happening between you and nurturing part, your behavior, your lifestyle. And a lot of it is, first of all, delayable, is preventable, and even after you get it, it's curable. So I would say the positive part is, and this conference we had, that was the major theme, you can do it. So both diabetes, and diabetes is the mother of all this, if you want to think of it, because that's where majority of it starts, which then leads to side effects and complications like kidney disease. Blood pressure will be even more fundamental than diabetes. So I would say blood pressure and glucose will be the reason. And the reason South Asians have this much higher is, to a great extent, maybe 70%, maybe 60%, maybe 80%, you could pick any number. Reason is lifestyle. And that mostly gets into nutrition and diet. And we could talk more about it because a lot is known now. And the physical activity and sleeping patterns, stress, and all those things combined. It's not one of them, it's all combined. And at the outset, let me just say, as far as diet goes, I'm not really just talking about what you eat. Indian diet is very delicious, and I love it. Most probably I miss it. I just dread the day if I won't have it, because we're used to a lot of spices and a lot of body to it. But what more important is about diet is how you eat, when you eat, why you eat, and how much you eat. Those 4 are more important than what you eat. And I think that is a concept I find in last 10 years, as we've been talking about, is not that well known. And people don't realize, like in our community, as you know, we love celebrations, we love parties. So every time anything is there, we say, let's have a party, or birthday party, wedding party, and somebody's coming, let's celebrate. So those celebrations are very good, and I think that's wonderful. But people don't eat till 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and that is Achilles' heel. So if you ask me in one sum up point, and that would be that your behavior related to your lifestyle, which is related to dietary habits, I should say, not just the diet, but dietary habits. And I think there is a lot of science on it, and the nice thing is, it's within you.
Dr. Garg, that was a lot of information. Thank you. I think I'm going to need a minute to process all that. We're going to cut to a commercial. Can you stay with us?
Yes, absolutely. We're happy to be.
Great. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Let's see. So, kidney is These are my grandpa's kidney stones. They're very precious. Kidney is a bone in your back that helps you turn.
I don't know, to be honest.
They don't know kidneys are vital, do you? Get the facts at kidney.ca.
Dr. Garg, I just want to address for those out there in the population that maybe don't know what to look for. What are some of those general risk factors, symptoms, and indicators that an individual should be looking for with regards to some of these conditions we talked about?
Yeah, so I think in general terms, first of all, if you're just looking at from a very starting point of view, then I think your weight, for example. Obesity is a major symptom of that you are something not going right. So you need to be aware of that. In terms of able to measure, obviously general health. So do you feel tired? Do you feel like you have to go to bathroom too often? Any of those changes become important. But I think the one parameter or one thing people don't think of is blood pressure. I would say if there is a message in our conversation, message is know your numbers, and the blood pressure will be very high. Obviously the waistline, the body mass index, all those things are important, but blood pressure, I think, is the key. As they say, blood pressure is the silent killer.
Excellent. That's a great list. So, what can people with risk factors do to prevent kidney disease and other similar chronic diseases that impact the South Asian community?
Yeah, I think kidney disease, in some ways, you could say, is the outcome of other things. Poor kidney, just visualize, kidney just doing its job, day in, day out, filtering, pressing, keeping us all well. But if we keep loading it with certain things it shouldn't be there, then it starts to get worried. So kidney diseases, the prevention of kidney diseases to a great extent is prevent some of the diseases which causes it. So I think to delay diabetes, you also delay kidney disease. And to delay diabetes, we come back to our lifestyle and behavior modification important.
I'd love to kind of ask you what the impact of mental health is in the South Asian community who live with chronic kidney disease, and how do we address that?
Well, that leads right into yoga, so thanks for asking. But obviously, mental health comes in many shapes and many ways, right? And the first thing is, on one hand, people are not that reluctant to talk about physical illnesses. Like you break your leg, say I broke a leg, people have a cast, people will autograph it, right? So it's okay to talk about it. You have diabetes, people are willing to talk about it. The biggest problem I see in our community with mental health is that we are still very reluctant to address it head on, and we don't talk about it. There is a certain amount of stigma attached to it. So I would say that is a huge problem or huge issue. I mean, it's true everywhere, but in South Asian heritage, that's even more so. So I think we need to make a concerted effort to say it's okay to talk about it, get help.
When we talk about mental wellness and feeling good about ourselves, we talked a little bit about yoga. So what are some holistic approaches one can take towards their health?
Yeah, I think in general, I would like to start out by saying in no way we should downplay the science of acute care or what we do. Like as a medical doctor, 40 years, day in, day out, I did it. And I saw how beautifully it works. So there is no part of my conversation in any way says do this but not that. So what I'm talking about is how can we bring fullness to this conversation rather than only part of it. And this is what I have termed called internal interventions. So I see external interventions and internal interventions. So external interventions are things which are done to you. You have a problem, you go see a doctor, doctor gives you a pill, you take a pill, you feel better. You have a high blood pressure, you take a pill, you feel better. That's external intervention. You really don't have much control on it. You are a passive passenger. And I think it's very important. If people are listening or watching, I would say you must seek that help. You can't just say, oh, it will be okay, I don't have to do it. Or it doesn't work. No, it does work. While we are learning everything about acute care, so-called looking after in the minute amount what we are doing, if we start to also think of the person as a whole, what is holistic approach to health, that will, I think, help in chronic diseases.
All right, everybody, stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's easy to be a community hero for the Kidney Foundation with Return Express. Just bring your unsorted beverage containers in a sealed clear plastic bag to your local Return It Express depot or kiosk. Print your tags with account number kidney cans, stick them on the bags, and leave them in the designated area. Return It Express will sort, count, and refund your deposit to the Kidney Foundation BC and Yukon account. It's that easy. Find out more at kidney.ca/kidneycans.
Dr. Garg, I really want to think about the community as a whole, the patient, their family, their caregivers, their physicians, and also stakeholders and public policy. So what is the importance in patients owning their experience and sharing their stories with others, including impacting other patients, researchers, and policy decision makers?
Great question. In our journey of last 10 years, there are certain things which are becoming clearer. So we already talked about acute care, chronic care, self-management, internal, external. The other thing which has become very clear, and as one of our recommendations from this conference, is how do you really make a difference? So what is the gap? So what's emerging is that we emphasize so much about the individual care. We need to add to this what we call, or what you might call, community care. In other words, community is engaged in influencing that particular process. Now, I'm not talking about advocacy. I'm talking about still system development. We like to work in groups. We are not that much of an individual. The motivation is my brother says so, my sister says so, my mother says so, my daughter says so. That energizes us. And I think we need to use that. So community engagement in all these interventions. And there is no place right now which that exists. So I think policymakers, you're asking what impact this has on policy, policymakers should reflect that. And in the past, there were some modalities available where this was happening without people realizing it's happening. So, for example, religious ceremonies, religious activities was bringing people together. And in our industrial world, it's getting less and less. So I think we need to create new ways of thinking and bringing people together. And there is no better way to do that than health. So I would say that is an important piece of community engagement, community participation. The other, I would say, there is influencers. So our work clearly shows there are some people who influence this more than others, and we need to incorporate them in this care. In South Asian community, still family is the biggest influencer. And even in a nuclear South Asian family is still very big influencer. In our community, a woman has such a big influence, mother, sister, wife, daughter. They have such an influence on this behavior. And I think we need to incorporate that in our solutions. We somehow listen to that. Nudging takes place, and the outcomes are much better when that is in play. Certainly the science seems to say that in South Asian community, when intervention is done as a community, it has a bigger impact than when it's done individually.
Can you imagine losing most of something without realizing it? Over time, kidney disease can destroy up to 80% of kidney function before you notice any symptoms. Talk to your family doctor to see if you're at risk and need to be screened. It could save your life.
So what I would love to get your thoughts on as we leave off, we've just gone through a pandemic and we're hopefully coming up on the other side of it. What are some positives or lessons that we've learned from COVID that we can take away and apply to other aspects of healthcare, such as chronic disease management?
This one really is the game changer. It will be shame if we continue when COVID is over, we just say, oh, we are over, back to normal life as usual. In my opinion, we must bring the change. And what are some of the specific changes? Certainly, based on our work, comes out in chronic diseases. First one we touched a little bit already, and that is we need to create empowerment of the individual. That is the self-management we talked about, the individual feels, I want to be healthy. And so that's one. The second is we need to have especially because we have a public healthcare system, so it has to be in public domain. A community facility, community organizations which bring the community together in that care. COVID kind of showed that when something hits you about which you know very little, then you have to take care. So the 5 P's of prevention, promotion, the prayers, the philanthropy, and protection, same thing applies here. But for me, the biggest lesson of COVID is when COVID hit, people didn't know what hit them. But what came out was that people were being affected differently than others. And that has opened the whole Pandora of individuality and what we call precision medicine. So we have to treat each one as an individual. I mean, you have heard about cultural sensitivity and that angle, but even biochemically, each one is different. And we need to make a point how to treat individual rather than collective. So in chronic diseases, like in kidney disease especially, this is very important. What are the reference values? Which reference value against which you will judge this person, whether they are normal or abnormal? Up till now, they were based on a global sense. We don't differentiate on the basis of culture. Now, the diversity, the ethnic and geographical diversity makes a huge difference how your body reacts. This post-COVID, this is a great opportunity that we need to bring the cultural relevance, cultural safety, cultural effectiveness, cultural efficiency. Those are like behavior terms. The other thing I think we're going to see out of COVID is more participation by the individual in their care. And technology is moving in that direction. So people have, who would have thought that Apple Watch will be called a medical device? And we call it a medical device. It has already blood pressure and oxygen saturation and pulse rate. And I'm confident day is not that far, it will have a proper blood pressure. It has their blood pressure. So just imagine what that will do. And then if we add some biomarkers to it, it will the game change. People will be monitoring their own glucose and only God knows what, right, after that. And once they have that information, we need to be prepared to use it properly. That means it will require connectivity. So all that information has to be available in time to healthcare providers, and you will have to develop a new system where that comes. So what's called virtual care or digital care, that will be another area worth watching.
That's a very good point. The digital care, we are moving into both with the virtual care and then with the digital care, because you're right, knowledge is power. We're tracking all these numbers. Where are they going? And your physician needs that. So I think that is going to be a space for us to watch moving forward, and make sure these tools are used to the best of their capacity to support us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Garg. Everyone stay tuned. After this commercial break, we'll be right back. Dr. Garg, I want to know, is there any final thoughts that you want to leave our viewers with?
I would say my final message is be empowered, be engaged, and educate yourself as much as possible so you become healthier based on what you are learning from it. So, God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Garg. So, Dr. Garg, I can't let you go just yet. Can you stick with us for a quick fire round?
Yes, absolutely.
What is your favorite food?
Well, I like spices. Spices give you that energy. So, favorite food is anything which is spicy.
What is your favorite beverage to make on a hot summer's day like today?
Well, I make my own, and that is I've come up with, which is 1/3 chilled white wine, and I mix it with my favorite mango juice. So it has to be chilled, and it is just out of the world. And I call it my amrit. In Hindi, amrit means the nectar of life. So that's my favorite drink.
Is there a mantra you like to live your life by?
One of the things which has kind of intrigued me and has guided me mostly in my professional work, and that is form follows the function. Form follows the function, and structure defines the behavior.